Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Jill Schupp is a two-term Democrat member of the Missouri State Legislature. She represents the people of District 82, which is in St. Louis County, just north of I-64 from Lindbergh to Missouri 141. She serves on the Appropriations Committee for Transportation and Economic Development, the Small Business Committee, the Higher Education Committee, and as a ranking member of the General Laws Committee. Representative Schupp founded and was recently elected chair of the Board of Missouri Veterans History Project. We'll talk more about that later. A nonprofit organization which exists to record stories of Missouri veterans, for the veterans' families, for the preservation with the Historical Society of the State of Missouri, and the Library of Congress. Representative Schupp is here today to provide her perspective of the 96th session of the Missouri Legislature. Jill Schupp. Welcome to Conversation.
Thank you for having me here today.
You're very welcome. So you're now in your fourth year,
That's
and
right.
in Missouri legislative terminology, you're a sophomore.
That's correct. Sophomore and halfway through to graduation from the Missouri House, should I continue to run and should my constituents continue to reelect me.
Well, I suspect that unless somebody comes along and tries to swipe that position from you, you'll probably be there. Now, right now, the legislature in Missouri has a limit of 8 years that you can be in the Missouri House, and then once you've reached 8 years, you can't run again, right?
That's correct, and
Right.
we also have 8 years in the Senate.
Right.
So as you probably know, I filed legislation that says, I know people like the idea of term limits because there are some people occasionally in politics that they don't like, and they think maybe it's the only way to get them out. Having served in a legislature that's made up of people who are living in term limit time, let me tell you, it's not good for Missourians. We have people who come in, we don't know even how to find the restrooms, much less how to deal with the legislative process, a lot of bills that get heard year after year, what those bills are, how to manage our time well, and how to reach across the aisle, which is one of the most important things that I think we lose in a term limited era, because we all come in there with our ideas and we want to get them done before we're termed out in 8 years.
So your bill says what?
My bill says, I understand that people like term limits. So that in mind, currently you can serve 8 years in the House and 8 years in the Senate. This just says we have 16 years total if a person wants to serve that long. Let him or her run in either chamber for either amount of time, totaling 16 years. So you could be a senator for 16 years, or a House member, or serve 4 years and 12 years, some combination thereof.
Personal note, I deal with both the Missouri and the Illinois legislature and legislators. The people who have long served in the Illinois legislature, which has no term limits, have said to me on more than one occasion, we don't know who to deal with over there in Missouri. They come and go, and this may or may not be a good example, but for example, Mr. Madigan, who is the Speaker of the Illinois House,
Right.
has been there for something like a quarter of a century. And, he's a fixture, a known quantity. People know what he's trying to accomplish. When he looks to Missouri, there is no senior partner to deal with over there. It's amazing to me how in your legislature, people move up very, very quickly into leadership positions,
Right.
because you got to almost, if you were in the majority party, next time, the next 2 years that you're in there, you would have to be lined up if you were going to be Speaker of the House. You'd almost have to be lined up in this coming term.
Right, and currently the Speaker of the House for next session is lined up, assuming he wins his election, which I believe he will. He's lined up as Speaker, and I will tell you a couple things happen. One is the institutional knowledge that has been there for years and years is no longer in the hands of legislators. We don't know a lot of the history that's gotten us to this point. The people who know it are staff members and lobbyists.
Lobbyists.
And those are the people that we need to go to and get the information from, because we want to understand historically what got us to the place that we are so that we can make good decisions going forward. So again, I don't think that bodes well for the people of Missouri. The other thing I will tell you from legislators I've spoken to who served a longer period of time in the House or the Senate is that they say it takes about 8 years to really get a good sense of what's going on and to really build relations with people across the aisle. You know, as a Democrat, one of 57 out of 163 House members, if we don't build relationships with people across the aisle, we're never going to get anything passed. Mm-hmm. It's something that's essential and necessary, and I think good, because we all know better decisions are made in an environment of discussion and openness and compromise. So term limits really limit our ability to do our jobs well.
As a member of the minority, and Democrats you're severely in the minority in Missouri. For those who don't know this, both the House and the Senate
That's right.
Is completely dominated by the Republican Party, but the governor is also a Democrat. How do they ever let you say anything on the floor?
Well, yes, they do, and they do let us say something, but not all the time. And actually, this recent discussion we had about contraception and about the Affordable Care Act and whether contraception, you know, we have some legislation in the state of Missouri along those lines. There were 7 women who were standing, women legislators
Okay.
on the Democratic side of the aisle, who were standing up on the floor for over 2 hours, raising our papers so that we could be called
recognized.
on to be recognized by the speaker. And we let a lot of men speak during that debate, but none of the 7 women who stood up there for over 2 hours were allowed to speak in a debate that we really think primarily affects women's health. But
why do you think that Mr. Tilley made that decision?
well, actually, Mr. Tilley was not, Speaker Tilley was not running the floor at that time. Another representative was taking his place. The speaker is always allowed to bring someone else in to run the floor when he's busy with other matters. I'm not sure why someone believed that quashing the voice of women, Democratic women, was a good idea in that debate. Nobody came to me and asked me if I thought that was going to be a good idea. But I think it doesn't speak well. Now, I will say, generally speaking, Democrats are allowed to get up and make their points. It's all we have, really, is our voices on the floor. Not always, and the Republicans have used a tool that is accessible and available to them, calling for the previous question to end debate and move forward. And again, it is at their discretion when that happens. I will tell you that almost every Democrat votes against that motion every time it's brought up, because we once again believe that decisions are made when all the facts and all the information is out there.
Now, I have to say this, that if I were to speak to some of the Republicans who have been around a while in terms of politics, not, you know, because they are limited,
Right.
those would say, they would say, in the pre-Catherine Hanaway period, Republicans had nothing to say. We're in the minority, and we're often simply ignored or asked to go golf. That was it.
Well,
and so it seems to me that on both sides, that when you have the majority, it's a power play.
well, and that may be true. And here's what I will say to you about that. When you have a majority of 106 out of 163 in the House and 26 out of 34 in the Senate, it would seem to me that it would be very easy to allow the minority party to speak, because at the end of the day, you're in charge, you're in control. If this is a bill on either the House or Senate side that you believe should be passed, you have the numbers to get those bills passed.
In brief, let's be brief, what is it that the 7 standing women wanted to say that they never were heard?
Well, I think we all have different ideas, and actually we had a short press conference after session that day. But there are very different ideas and opinions about why contraception is so important to women's health. And so it was conversation about that. And to say that, you know, really the majority of people that spoke that day were men, when this is an issue that directly impacts women, we thought that was inappropriate.
Okay.
So, in brief.
Yeah, we could have a philosophical discussion here, but what we're not. There seems to be a divergence between the two parties as to people spending their own money for their own stuff, and the idea of taxing, taking the money, and bureaucrats making a decision about where that money is going to be spent. And I think that seems to be the dividing line between the two parties as far as I can tell. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think that is a simplification of what happens.
Very simplified.
Right. We all know that there are certain things that we as a state and we as a nation can do together that none of us as individuals can do. So, yes, I think there's a question about what is the best way to utilize our money? Is it to allow me as an individual? You know what, if I had to build the roads to get here myself, trust me, we would not be having a conversation today. Right. And we know that there are certainly infrastructure needs and other kinds of needs that can best be paid for communally. And so I think that while that may be part of the discussion, it's also a discussion about what values we have, what priorities. On the Democratic side of the aisle, I will tell you that the 5 main priorities that I think all of us agree on are healthcare, education, making sure that we have jobs and that we turn around this economy, especially in this environment, and we know that things are starting to move forward a little bit, so that's a real positive sign. We want to make sure that workers are taken care of so that if you are working, you're not living in poverty. And we believe that there should be an elimination or an effort to eliminate poverty so that all people can take care of themselves, and then maybe the government doesn't have to step in and intervene.
Let's start with education, which I see as one of the basic issues of our society. Because without education, you don't get the good job, you can't make the money, and you're not coming out of poverty. So I look, for example, to the city of St. Louis and its school system. Now, I noticed that at one point in your career, you have either co-sponsored or sponsored a bill to reduce class sizes.
Right.
These guys don't have enough money to do anything with as it is with the class sizes they have. What are we going to do about a system in which, and I'm talking about a school system in which literally half of the people who enter that school system drop out before they get anywhere near graduation, and those who actually get all the way through, half of those are functionally illiterate.
Right, and it's a big problem, and it's interesting because the class size bill goes to addressing some of those kinds of issues, and there's so many educational issues that are interrelated, and at the end of the day, if we were able to put into place really good practices, I think that we could help people matriculate through the system, have a good education, go on to work and get a good paying job so they can take care of themselves. Class size, we know, and back when I served on the school board from 2000 to 2000.
Which school board was that?
I served on the Ladue School Board
Ladue,
from 2000
okay.
to 2006. And I learned a lot and studied a lot about education and about class size. That was one of our issues, even in a school that has a reputation of graduating most of its students and sending them on to good colleges and making sure that they get good jobs. But even in that school district, we had an issue, and we had to bring forward an issue about class sizes. It's actually one of the issues I ran on when I first ran for school board. But back at that time, there was a study that had been done in Tennessee called the Tennessee Star Study about class size, and particularly in school districts like the city of St. Louis, in urban school districts where there are families living in poverty. What we know is that children tend to graduate and move forward and become more successful when the ratio of teacher to students is lower. I'm sorry, is higher.
Right.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to the parents. Because when your parent is working with the kid, their own children, it's a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. And I personally, having talked to Diane Borisoff, former
Right.
superintendent, having talked to school board members in districts that are high and low, everybody says it's the parents. It's not so much the schools, it's the parents who are not involving themselves. I know your parents probably pushed you. My parents pushed me, but you have in the city of St. Louis, in East St. Louis, and North County schools, areas where the parents simply, they're not educated themselves and don't seem capable or desirous of training their own children.
Well, and you know, I don't know that I would agree with the capabilities of those parents, but let's talk about those 5 issues that I said Democrats can agree on, and one of them being living in an environment of poverty. You know, when you're worried about whether you're going to have a roof over your head the next day, or whether you're going to be able to put food on the table for your children, or you're working 3 jobs to try to make ends meet, I can't imagine that you're going to be able to come home in the evening and try to sit down with your child and do math and do spelling and do reading. It's difficult. It's a whole different world than I think the one you and I grew up in is. So what we also know about the city schools is that there's a 60% turnover rate in any given classroom in a year. So think about that. People are having to uproot and move out of their homes into a different home. Their children are going with them. Their children who we don't know are adequately fed and nourished through whatever difficulties that parent is having. And so when I say these issues tie together, you know, poverty ties into education, which ties into the idea of class size, will that change things, or making sure that a teacher gets to know a student because we can keep that student in that same classroom for the entire year. That student gets to know his or her classmates because we try to do things, to put into place things that will keep them together for an entire year. There are a lot of factors in play here, and class size is one of many issues that we need to address to ensure all of our kids get educated. Look, you and I don't want to think that there are kids going to school in the city or in Riverview Gardens or in any other unaccredited school district who are going to graduate without the skills they need to succeed. It doesn't behoove you, it doesn't behoove me, it's not good for any of us, and it's certainly not good for those families. So, you know, we have research that tells us that by 3rd grade, we can tell if kids are going to end up going down a route that is productive or may end up in prison. Let's do what we can and support those city schools. We have a lot of businesses in the city, in the area. We need to get those schools what they need. And when we talk about, and you haven't really brought this up specifically, but not having any money, you know, so many people say, well, we keep throwing money at the problem of city schools. Not true. Think about when you walk through the door. In my school district, nobody has to go through a metal detector before they can go to class. In the city schools, we have to pay for metal detectors. We have to pay for security guards to be on duty there. It's a whole different environment. Let's be committed to our city schools and make sure we have what we need there.
Yes. I mean, I do not disagree with what you said at all, okay? And I don't want to get into the cultural differences because that leads me down the wrong road for this particular discussion. But at some point, the people who live in the city have to demand of the parents and of the students that we need you to be more productive in life, that drugs, violence is not the way, education is the way, and that as a society we're going to reward you for being educated. People have got to believe that, because if they don't believe that, you're absolutely right. They're going to go like, what's the sense? Why am I working hard here?
Well, I think that probably people do believe that and do understand that. It's just that, and I'm not trying to make excuses for anyone, but let's do what we can to make sure that we're starting at a level playing field, that these kids are being fed, that they have shelter, that they have a place to live, that they feel safe, that their parents feel that they're safe. Let's make sure we have some of those basic needs met, and then we can talk about how we say to the parents, we're going to hold you accountable to help make sure that your children get well educated in school.
Now there is another area of interest of yours is jobs.
Right.
What is it that the legislature of the state of Missouri can do to help business? And I know you know about this because your husband's in business.
Yes, he is.
So what is it that a political organization can do to get business organizations to hire more people?
Well, I think that we create an environment where we help grow this state and we make it more productive overall. And I'll tell you, I have an idea. My husband is actually in the process now of hiring more people because one of the contracts he has with one of his clients has been expanded. So we're really excited about that. And I don't think it had anything to do with any incentives per se that the state put into place recently. Now, years ago when he bought a building in downtown St. Louis, beautiful building, he was able to utilize historic tax credits to upgrade that building. So there are some tax credits in place that I think help us use some of this beautiful architecture and these beautiful old buildings to develop an area, and he happens to be a darn good businessman, and he's employed very good people, and their business continues to grow. But I want to talk to you about another idea that I've been talking to other legislators about and to people throughout the St. Louis area. And it came when I was meeting with someone who I just wanted to talk to, who has a business in my district. And I went to him and said, "You're a successful businessman. Tell me what you've done and tell me how we can help you and other businessmen or businesswomen create jobs." And he said, well, you know, interestingly, he happens to be a person very interested in the arts. He said, "I've been looking around and thinking about our community." And he said, here in the St. Louis area, we have 3 things that are really unique. One, we have the largest collection of Native American artifacts of anywhere else in the world. We have the confluence, and we're the home of the blues. He said, why aren't we looking at building on tourism and putting places like those together? You know, we have amazing architecture in St. Louis. We have a wonderful art museum, Forest Park that houses so many tourist opportunities, a great zoo that's free. We have...
People are always knocked out in other places of the country when you say, oh, that zoo is
right,
free.
and it's such an amazing zoo, as we both know.
People don't realize they $10, $15, $20 to go to the zoo other places.
Right, and we have a wonderful theater district around Grandel and Powell Symphony Hall, those areas that are growing. He said we should be looking at putting together tourism packages, and packages that include transportation, and I'd love to see us build on public transportation in the state of Missouri, and particularly in the St. Louis area for starters. Hotels, they would bring people in to go to restaurants and put people together with things they love. Maybe you're a theater goer who also loves looking at art, so you would go to the art museum and some other kinds of tourist kinds of opportunities in the area. Maybe you want a tour of the beautiful architecture that the St. Louis area has to offer. Maybe you are somebody who is interested in being outdoors and you want to go see the confluence and then go fishing in Bennett Springs, Missouri, for example. So if we work together to put these packages together, to not only draw people from surrounding states and from the United States, but overseas, if we export Missouri as our tourism product, we'll bring all kinds of people in. We'll get this economy rolling again, from restaurant owners to shopping, to retailers, to hotel owners and businesses, and we'll start making things move again. And so I've met with several people around St. Louis about this, people from Branson, and also I'm meeting when we get back to session next week with Don Ruzicka, who is the head of the Tourism Committee. And we're going to talk about this. We don't know if there's even legislation needed. What we need are people to come together and say, yes, here are some ideas. Tourism is a top producer for our state. Let's make sure that we build on who we are and what we have. Let's export Missouri, and let's export then some of our products. When people come here and try our Missouri beef and our Missouri pork, maybe they'll want to have it shipped over to where they live in other countries. So those are the kinds of ways I think that we build on job creation here in the state.
Good. Now, time goes by so fast here. I want to give you, we got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
I want you to cover this, what we were talking about earlier, which is this Missouri Veterans History.
The Missouri Veterans History Project. Thank you so much for letting me do that. A couple of years ago in the legislature, we took all the money out of the budget. We needed it elsewhere, and it was being utilized by a private company to produce the oral histories of veterans. And I got up on the floor at that time and said, we need this money elsewhere, but we have the University of Missouri School of Journalism down the street, 30 minutes away from the Capitol. Let's see if we can get them involved, and let's see if we can start producing veterans' histories at no cost. And that was the beginning of it. And it's actually, at the University of Missouri, it's the students in the schools of history that are most interested in this. Mm-hmm. But we are working with all kinds of organizations, and we meet monthly in Columbia, Missouri. We've done a pilot program in Columbia, Missouri, and a large-scale program here in the St. Louis area. And here's what we're doing. We are meeting with veterans. We are taking their oral histories. We are going
on camera.
On video camera.
Right.
We are utilizing the Library of Congress's rules and regulations so that once we get a veteran's story told, we send his or her story to the State Historical Society of Missouri. We send them a DVD and all the paperwork. They make a copy of it and send it on to the Library of Congress. So the veteran receives a copy of his or her story. The State Historical Society archives that story for state use, and the Library of Congress then archives it at the national level. And we get this story of all the veterans who have served in our state, whether they served recently or whether they were World War II veterans. We try to capture all of them, and I meet so many and they'll tell me, I don't have a story to tell, I wasn't in combat.
Until you get them to talk
Until you get them to talk, and everybody's got a story to tell about what made up his or her experience.
Now you have a
our
brochure
country.
here, and I'm going to hold it up for the camera, and if we can just zoom in a little bit on that. And keep talking.
Yeah,
while
and
they're
this,
looking at that.
so this is, right now we are very well staffed with volunteers. This is all volunteer basis. So one of the things we ask is for people who are interested in this kind of history to join with us and become volunteers, to learn how to videotape, to learn how to interview people, to learn how to just log the recordings as we go through. And of course we want veterans and veterans and their families to call in and get their stories done.
So they can, we've got some graphics that we have for people if they want to contact.
Right.
So if
we have a website.
There it is, up there on the screen
and
now.
we have an email address and we have a phone number. And if people call in and tell us they're interested, and again, I want to emphasize the need for volunteers. We have some amazing volunteers here in St. Louis who are really doing this on a voluntary basis. Literally, it seems like 24/7. We have told over 200 stories now since we started a little over a year ago at no cost to the state or to the public. It's just simply some of my time. My assistant is one of the people who serves in this. And other than that, these are volunteers throughout the state, from companies like Midwest Litigation to the State Historical Society to the Veterans Commission to the American Legion. All kinds of organizations have stepped forward and said, we want to be part of this. We want to help. It's pretty amazing. And to capture these histories, you know, you get sometimes just one opportunity to do that. So
see, when people want things done, they actually happen.
They do, and it's pretty amazing. So I feel, and the University of Missouri, I have to say, out of Columbia, has been just an amazing partner in this, and their government relations person, their lobbyist, has worked with me from the beginning of this to get this all set up, and they have just been very gracious hosts. And we're hoping companies like, we're waiting for our nonprofit status. As soon as we have that, companies like Monsanto are willing to come in, because we do have costs and expenses. And so far, some of us have been paying them. But for these hundreds of interviews we've gotten, our total costs have been in about the $2,000 range. So pretty amazing.
Now, to me, now I don't want to get into this. If government were doing this,
government was doing it at $1,400 a pop.
Yes.
And we
got to go. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Lee.
Well, thank you for coming and being with us. And to my audience, I've been speaking with Jill Schupp. She is a Democrat state representative from the state of Missouri. She represents District 82, which is in St. Louis County. She was talking about the Missouri Veterans History Project, which is very important. You ought to look them up on the net, go there, and if you're a veteran and has something to say, go say it. See you all next week.